So they go in the house, and this is when the big so-called speeches start up. So Miller, when he wrote the novel, and I read it, on the jacket sleeve, a writer, I think from the New York Times or somewhere, said, this is not just a novel, it's a screenplay. And Miller intentionally wanted it to be that way, because he looked at this story as eventually a role for his wife, Marilyn Monroe. This was a Valentine's gift to Marilyn. So I totally believe that Marilyn Monroe was attracted to Miller because, she had been very successful in comedies and musicals. She's a great dancer, really good singer, comedic roles. 7-Year Itch. She had just done that when she just met up with Miller again. And so she wanted it to be taken seriously as a comedic, or rather a dramatic actress. And Miller believed in her that she could do it, and she was a very good actress, but was not getting the roles, the avenue to do it. And he was that avenue in her mind. That's what I believe. And he kept pumping her up in that way. Obviously, it soured later. I got comments regarding Miller and the book he wrote after. We can get into that at some other time. So Miller wrote this as a screenplay, but also as a novel. So when you look at the speech, the first major proclamation, and it's usually through Guido, so I believe he added that character where he could just basically write out on the screen, this is what I think. And it's usually about Marilyn, about Rosalind. So all these characters mirror each other in real life. Miller said that the Gay Langland was almost exactly like Clark Gable in real life. He had character, and he stuck to his guns on everything, and he had no hate in his heart. That was the last thing he said about Gable when he was discussing him after he died. He had no hate in his heart, and he wrote it on the first page of the novel before chapter 1. So Monroe was Rosalind Tabor. He wrote the book as a Valentine's gift to her, as a love story. And everyone, so in the movie, all the way along the way, she lights up the room. So they go in and they sit down, and Guido sits in his big chair. As Rosalind said, this is your chair. And he said, that's a matter of fact, it is. And so he starts talking. This is Eli Wallach's he had two major kind of speeches. The second one was when they get to the dry lake to chase the horses, when they were at the campground the night before they go to chase the horses. So in this one, they're having some drinks, and Guido says, during the war, I had 50 tours in the war, and during that time when I had leave, I was designing this house, but I never had an idea how it would look eventually. I just couldn't figure out how to finish it. And you, a perfect stranger, Rosalind, you walk into this room, and it all lights up. Everything looks great. It looks just the way it should. And you know why? And Rosalind, like Marilyn in real life, she's very humble, says, I don't know. Very unassuming. He goes, because Rosalind, you have the gift for life.
You just walk in, a stranger out of nowhere, and for the first time, it all lights up. And I'm sure you know why.
Why?
Because you have the gift of life, Rosa. The rest of us, we just looking for a place to hide and watch it all go by.
Amen.
Here's to your life, Rosalind. I hope it goes on forever.
And yours. And yours, Isabel. Gay. Gay did all the work.
So to me, the first major quote was when Rosalind said at the courthouse steps, "If I'm gonna be alone, I'd rather be by myself." This was the second big one. Comes out of Guido's mouth. Rosalind, you have the gift for life. She cares about other people. She has empathy. She feels what other people feel. And animals too. And he goes, "So Rosalind, you light this room up. All of a sudden it looks great. You got to make yourself happy, you know. No one else is going to do it for you." And usually when you transmit positivity, and that's what Rosalind and Monroe is all about, usually people are drawn to you. No one wants to be around someone who's always complaining like Guido, or sulking like Guido. That's why I think Miller wrote into it, like, consistently Rosalind keeps like swatting down Guido and, you know, disrespecting him. She wanted nothing to do with him because she saw through his hypocrisy, because he always showers her with these proclamations that he makes. They're having drinks, and then the idea of the Mustangs comes up to go up. Guido said he saw 15 in the mountains, and Gay says, "Well, we need a third guy." And so, movie magic, they go out to the Dayton Rodeo. Happens to be that night. So they go out there and they see Perce Howland, which is played by Montgomery Clift. That's his first scene of the movie. And they see him and they wave to him, and he says, "Hey, old Gay, what's up?" And he's on the phone talking to his mother, or he's waiting for a call from his mother, and he's trying to get into the rodeo. So he's trying to get into the rodeo, and he doesn't have the money. He hitchhiked a ride, and the guy left him there. And Gay says, "You know, I'll give you $10 for the rodeo." And, you know, Perce wanted a bottle of beer, good bottle. So Gay said, "Okay, I'll pay it, the $10, and I'll buy you a good bottle of beer in that liquor store if you go Mustanging with us tomorrow. And don't get hurt, by the way." And he, sure enough, at the rodeo, they go off to the rodeo, gets 2 concussions. He falls off the horse first, and then he falls off a Brahma bull. And after that, another important scene where Gay is in the station wagon with Rosalind. She's crying because, remember, she's all sensitivity. She thought Perce was going to die, and she tells Gay, "What if he died in there?" And Gay said another important quote.
People dying. People just standing around. Don't you care?
Well, I just went into that boy with a wild bull running loose. What are you talking about? I'm not going to be sitting here myself. Don't you know that? Well, I just thought I could get him out, so I did.
Die. It would be terrible.
We all gotta go sometime. We know he's dying as natural as living. The man who's too afraid to die, too afraid to live.
So in other words, you have to take, you know, some risks in life, you know, within reason, if you're going to enjoy life to the fullest. Because if you're afraid of everything, you're not going to do anything in your life. You're just going to sit in the sofa. So Rosalind sees Perce come up to the station wagon, and he says, "How'd I do? How'd I do?" And then Guido, they decide to go into the bar again. Guido opens the door, and Rosalind again insults him by saying, because Guido says, Rosalind, you know, put your attention with someone that appreciates it. And she goes, where's that? Who's that? So he keeps trying to make a pitch for her, and he always gets slammed. So they go into the bar again. Percy's dancing with Rosalind for a little while, and then they go to the back of the saloon. And this was a marathon scene. It took them like 3 days because Marilyn Monroe kept messing up her parts, and so did Montgomery Clift. But the main crux of this scene, because John Huston wanted it in one take, that's why it took so long, was Percy spilling his guts to Rosalind, telling her about, well, you know, I was the oldest kid and I was supposed to inherit my ranch, and my dad went out in the back. I believe this was Wyoming, and then he gets shot by these hunters that were careless, and he died, and then his wife his mother fell in love with this guy, and then 3 months later she marries him, and then he offers him wages, which is a total insult because none of these guys like wages, 9-to-5 jobs. And he also said he had a girlfriend and he went to rodeo, got knocked out by a bull, and then while he was in the hospital, not only did his girlfriend not go see him, she takes off with these 2 other guys that were supposedly his friends. So all of these folks are disillusioned with relationships. He tells her, you know, don't let women get chewed up out here. Don't let that happen to you. They'll grind you up out here. Stay, in other words, stay this beautiful, innocent person that you are. You know, he goes like, it seems like you were just born yesterday. And she goes, no, I'm not, trust me. And never lose that enthusiasm for life is what he's trying to tell her. And then he finally says, I think I love you. So he's laying down, it's a great scene, he's lying down, Montgomery Clift, on Monroe's lap. And there's this old wreck of a Chevy behind them that they're leaning on, bunch of beer cans, really beautiful scene. Well done by Mehdi, the cinematographer, and George Tomasini, the editor who worked on a lot of the Hitchcock movies. So at that moment, well, he says, I think I love you. He says, you don't even know me. So everyone's kind of making a pitch for Rosalind. Guido is. Percy says it didn't really translate in the movie. I just didn't think I don't think they spent enough time on that. And the head of United Artists felt that, Arthur Krim felt that when he first saw the rough cut, thought, well, I don't see the friction. There's not enough fighting between these guys, or even maybe a little fist fight or a wrestling match or a shouting match between them to make it think that they're trying to take Gay's girlfriend away or anything like that. So there's some truth to that. I didn't see that in the movie. Gay comes out the door, the back door of the saloon, and says to Rosalind, come and meet my kids. Remember, he says he sees them a couple of times a year, usually at rodeos. And it turns out when they get back in, they're gone. So, you know, he was a deadbeat dad. After his divorce, he was never there for those kids. He became, you know, a rodeo guy, and then he went out to the mountains, and he didn't like wages, so he never raised those kids at all. So they didn't want, even though he said, oh, they're happy to see me, no, they weren't. You weren't around, so they just took off. And Gable had a great scene in the movie where he jumps up on the truck, on the Chevy outside of the bar.
I am gone too. Don't be right back. You come here now.
Don't worry, mister. You'll probably find him home.
Dialogue. You come here now. I know you have me. I know you have me. You come here now.
said. So they get in the car. Guido has a spiel about the war where he was a bomber pilot, and he says we're all blind bombardiers. Like, he would drop these bombs and he wouldn't even know where they're going, really. You know, they know their targets, but you can't hear it. It's really silent up there except for the propellers, and then after that they come back, probably, you know, England, after dropping them, I'm assuming in Germany, over Germany. But you never saw the damage. He goes, there's lives that were destroyed. These people were postmen and housewives and kids that were students, and I never saw the damage. So he's crying out, and he's going 90 miles an hour, and he says, Guido, please slow down. And he goes, at least say hi. And she says, okay, hi. And then he slows down. He says, you should give me a little bit more attention. And she just didn't like him. They get back to the ranch. They're all drunk. They go in the house, and Guido or rather Gay and Rosalind are outside. And so Gay is talking about, you know, where are you at, Rosalind? So he's growing closer to her, and he's feeling really bad about his kids taking off on him. He said, you know what, if I just had another kid, I would know how to raise him right. And he's alluding to his kids that ditched him. And Rosalind was saying, well, I'm sure they love you, Gay, you know, don't take it so hard. And he goes, where are you at? Would you want to have a kid with me? And she's kind of waffling. She's afraid to get in another, you know, marriage. Obviously, she just got divorced. And that's an interesting thing, because after the paddleball scene earlier, which I covered in another video, that's why I didn't do it here. Before the rodeo was the paddleball scene with Marilyn Monroe. Then there was the rodeo, and then again they went to the saloon, and that's when they had the scene behind the bar with Perce and Rosalind. So I just skipped that altogether. He's trying to say, you know, I would do it right this time, and she is afraid of another relationship. And so she says, oh, the lights of the wagon are on. He goes, forget about the wagon. Why do you bring these guys around? Just answer me straight. I mean, and she goes, Gay, you know, I don't know, you know, at the rodeo you got upset when I was feeling sorry for Perce, and I was afraid he was hurt, and you just pushed me aside. And then with the rabbits too, you weren't respecting my feelings. What if you stopped loving me? And he goes, well, Gay goes, well, didn't you have a dad that spanked you, you know? And then afterwards he would hug you. And he's trying to say, well, I was just trying to show you that this is the right way. And, you know, it's not that I don't love you. And Rosalind goes, well, first of all, I didn't have a dad or a mom that was around, and the people who spanked me were strangers for keeps. So, you know, Monroe was raised in orphanages throughout her childhood, like 10 of them. And Marilyn always joked around, like, if I only got 2 more, I would have had a baker's dozen, because I believe her mother's maiden name was Baker. And so that's you know, tragic, but pretty funny there. She would always look through life through the lens of, you know, it's tragic, Monroe, but, you know, let's look at the positive side as well. And so, no, I was spanked by strangers, because she was spanked and taken care of by the first 3 years of, like, between ages of, like, I have to go look again, like 5 through 8 or 5 through 11 by this one family, and they were very religious, but this weird kind of cult type of religion. But the bottom line is they're the ones who disciplined her. That's what she meant by strangers doing it. My dad never did it because I never had a dad. In fact, her mother, it was proven later, by DNA testing. Her biological father was a guy that her mother met. And so it's pretty much proven that this guy she had a one-night stand with was her actual father. And I don't remember his name right now. But so you go back and she starts getting very sentimental and she hugs Gay, oh, love me, Gay, love me, Gay. And weirdly, he just goes in the house, falls asleep, and she looks up at a star and says, help me, you know. So when she hugged Gay, that's kind of like, in real life, also Monroe, she married Arthur Miller. She married, before that, Joe DiMaggio. They were both significantly older. And her first husband, it was an arranged marriage, but even he was she was only like 16, and he was like in his mid-20s, I think, or early 20s. So even all of them were older. So she, especially DiMaggio and Miller, I think she was not only searching for a lover, but also like a husband, but also like a father figure. Because DiMaggio and Arthur Miller were significantly older than her. So the scene ends there. Gay kind of wants to draw closer. She does, but she's afraid. And again, I was alluding to that real quick, the first bar scene, after they came out after Monroe did the paddleball scene, Gay said, well, I'd marry you. And she says, well, you don't have to say that. So he's already kind of trying to let her know that he wants to start a family and get married. And it's kind of still a little weird because they literally just met like supposedly a month before or 3 weeks before. She just literally got a divorce and he's asking her to marry her, but they're discussing this. He is anyway. So the next day, Guido takes off the plane, he drives the horses out, then he jumps in the truck. Rosalind is in the passenger seat. Gay and Peirce are in the back with the lassos. And they're chasing the horses and they get them all. And unfortunately, there's not even 15, now there's 6, so it's even worse. You know, you want to, Peirce is having second thoughts. Rosalind always did. And now for only 6, it doesn't make any sense to kill these horses. So they tie them, they rope them, and the tires slow them all down, and they go to the stallion first. There's a stallion, 4 mares, and a colt. And when they go to the stallion, Peirce, Guido, and Gay lasso him again with 3 more lassos. They bring him down. It's a pretty violent scene. And it really affected Rosalind. And well, Gay was discussing with them, you know what, Rosalind isn't liking this at all, me neither. And for 6 horses, why don't we just give them to her? And right at that moment, Rosalind comes up, I'll buy them from you. And Gay got really insulted, takes off again in the truck. And same thing, Guido's driving, Rosalind passenger seat, and Gay and Peirce on the flatbed. And this is where Guido says to Rosalind, kind of his last main scene of the movie, you know, Rosalind, I never enjoyed this part. I just enjoyed the flying. And he's trying to make his last pitch at Rosalind. If you just give me a reason, I'll stop it. It'll be hell to pay, but I'll stop it. And of course, he looks like a jerk because you don't know the reason. They just wrangled this horse down. He was fighting like crazy when a few minutes ago he was in the mountains having a great time. And he wants to be free like you want to be free. You just don't get it. And so Rosalind tells him, you never cared about anybody. All you care about yourself. You supposedly loved your wife and were sad with her death and sad about the people you killed in the war, but you really don't care about anybody except yourself. So she just slams the door on him again. And so they drive up and they secure the mare, Gay and Guido do. Purse stays by the truck, and that's when they start talking, Guido and Gay. Gay says, well, how much do you think we should get for this? Gay is really upset that Rosalind wants to buy the horses. Like, I only sell the dealers. They're only there to buy the horses, like not to buy me off too or sell my soul to them. And so he says, Guido says, well, the mare, she's about 600 pounds, the stallion about 800 pounds. I'd say for all of them, 1,200, 120 bucks, maybe. And Gay says, okay, I'll take 40, and Guido says, I'll take 50 for me and the gas for the plane. Purse doesn't want any money. He's already siding with Rosalind. And so that's when Rosalind really loses it. And Monroe gives this awesome scene. She runs out onto the flat lake bed, and she yells at Gay and Guido and all of them.
I ought to have about 40 for the truck of me. At least 25 for you, Purse, all right? Purse!
No, you fellas take it. I just came along for the ride anyway.
Awesome scene. Monroe, when she saw the final screening in New York, didn't feel that she did a good job. She said she was out of sync. I'm not sure what that means. I have no idea whether she screamed too much. I thought it came out really well. And so Gay's aghast. Now he's really starting to think, man, am I doing the right thing? I was going to give her the horses. Then she really pissed me off, excuse the French, and then maybe I overdid it with this part. So Gay is starting to think that maybe I pushed it too hard. I was going to give her the horses, and I went back out after she wanted to buy them. I got really upset, and now I pushed it too hard. Right in front of her, how much are we going to get for these horses? So he's thinking about it. Guido hasn't changed at all. And as Guido is going to take off in the plane, Gay looks over and he sees that Purse is taking off in the truck, because Purse was talking with Rosalind. He says, I'll set him free if you want. And she said, no, I don't want. It'll just be another fight. It'll just be another fight. But he gets in the truck anyway. He goes out and he cuts the stallion loose. And then Gay just sees him and runs out, and he goes out to where one of the mares is, the one they tied up. And the stallion gets up to the mare who's tied on the ground, and then the little colt is walking around, and the mare runs right by Gay, and then he grabs the rope and he gets dragged along, and he's able to have these incredible scenes by the stuntmen. And even Gable was dragged along the lake at 35 miles an hour for the close-ups, and there was speculation that might have contributed to his death, because he died 12 days after the film was finished in LA at Paramount Studios. And Gay's wife thought that Monroe had more to do with it, with her constantly being late to the set. So he ropes it, and then he goes back to the truck, ties it around the front bumper, and then cuts it loose again. And Guido was proud of him. You held him. Why you went through all that and cut him loose? Why are you doing this? So Guido didn't understand anything. Then Gay said, I just don't like people making up my mind for me. And that's another awesome quote. He goes around the truck, sits on the running board, and this was a beautiful scene shot by Mehdi. So to finish this up, Gay gives like the last great quotes of the movie. Sits down on the running board and he says he realizes this is done. This isn't going to work. There's very few horses in the mountains anymore. This lifestyle is in the past. And he goes, Clark Gable and as Gay Langland, he goes, I'm done with it. It's like chasing a dream. I'm just doing what I always used to do. And that's chasing horses. And it's not my problem if the dealers afterwards are selling them for dog food as opposed to before where they were sold as ponies before the war. So he says, I'm done with it. I'll just have to find another way to feel alive, and that's going to be Rosalind, obviously. So this was episode 9, part 2, the main takeaways from the Misfits. My name is Ray Capote. Thank you for joining me. And as always, cheers.